Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, October 28th, 2021, and today we're going to be talking about the Fox News poll that was released yesterday that shows that Glenn Youngkin now takes an 8-point lead over Terry McAuliffe. Actually, this poll was published today. It was supposed to be released yesterday. The point being that Glenn Youngkin is absolutely obliterating Terry McAuliffe in this most recent Fox News poll. And if you're wondering, yes, Fox News does lean towards the right in terms of coverage, but has consistently put the Democratic Party ahead in this individual race, and it is quite interesting to see just how well the Republican Party is going to do, or at least is expected to do, as according to this brand new poll. And I think that when you take a look at the shift, it is not just a minuscule shift. This is a 13-point shift across the week that has elapsed between the last poll from Fox News and the most recent one. You can actually take a look here. If you take a look at the all polling data on Real Clear Politics, you might notice that there are a lot more ties now than there were before. In addition to that, you can see the Fox News poll from 10:10 to 10:13. Looking at it, the Democratic Party had a 5-point lead. I think that's something that should have been pointed out before and was pointed out on my channel. But looking at the most recent numbers, this is a number that you cannot ignore, cannot group into any of the others. And in this situation, altogether, I think that the Democratic Party should be absolutely panicking for their steps in the future, because this puts them in a very, very, very poor position for 2021 and 2022, and I stand by that point. So when you take a look at the numbers amongst this new Fox News poll, I personally was expecting it to become a tie. I think that the public sentiment on Glenn Youngkin and Terry McAuliffe has absolutely changed, but I don't think per se that this was going to be, I did not expect it to shift by such a monumental amount. When you take a look at the breakdown, you can exactly see this shift over just about a week, 2 weeks, of the 51 down to 45 and the 46 up to 53. This is a huge change in support, and this is the first real sign of a red wave forming in the 2022 election year. In addition to that, when you take a look at those who decided amongst registered voters, that's the thing. The lead narrows down significantly for Glenn Youngkin, just a 1-point lead instead of what is an 8-point lead. 1 versus 8 shows that if turnout is exceptionally high, the Democratic Party might end up doing better than they thought. But that doesn't seem to be the case, because when you take a look at those who are interested in the governor's race, just 1% of Youngkin supporters are not interested in the race, and 79% are extremely interested. The non-interested for Terry McAuliffe is 4%, and the extremely is 69%. Youngkin wins in every category in this matter, and I think that at this point in time, it makes sense. This is the party that is outside of office, is looking for some type of victory, and of course, they are going to be fired up and ready to go in Virginia's governor race. Now, when you take a look at the issue of education, it looks like Glenn Youngkin defeats Terry McAuliffe by a margin of 8 points across the state. Education to Virginia, specifically Northern Virginia, is unrivaled in terms of the importance to the voters there. They highly value education and consequently will go on the offense against anyone, Democrat or Republican, that seems to threaten that way of life. And thus, that ad that Glenn Youngkin has been consistently sending out of Terry McAuliffe saying that parents shouldn't be able to dictate what is or isn't taught in schools has been used time and time again and is a very effective strategy for the Republican Party, and I don't blame them for using it. It absolutely makes sense. So when you take a look at all of the numbers out of this poll, you do not arrive at it all defendable conclusion for the Democratic Party. I've seen some concerns about the sampling within this Fox News poll. A main concern also in Virginia is that they don't have party registration, so you don't know who to poll and how to poll them. But you can get ideas from those who voted in primaries. In addition to that, you can get ideas as to who's voting in certain groups based off of where they live and based off of their self-identification. So you do start to get a better understanding in that regard, but the fact is that, Fox News, no matter what you try to call on it, has a margin of error of 3 points, and this is well outside the margin of error, which should scare many, many Democrats. And it makes sense also to talk about this issue of immigration. Glenn Youngkin vowing to ban critical race theory if elected in Virginia, seemingly a very popular position across the state itself. And in addition to that, when you take a look at the reason why Glenn Youngkin might be rising and surging in popularity is because of President Joe Biden's deteriorating approval rating. At the time that the first poll was taken, it looked like that Joe Biden was going to have a negative overall approval rating of 5 points across the United States. Today, that number stands at a number larger than 7 points. And I think that that in itself is a testament to just how much this country has turned on Joe Biden. You can see here that 51% of the nation disapproves. So that means that you should probably see the polls a little bit closer than expected, but surprisingly enough, as we've seen with some of the more recent numbers in the state of Virginia, that the numbers show that Joe Biden's approval rating in Virginia is actually just as low as it is on the national average. And when you take a look at the 2021 polls here, Real Clear Politics may not necessarily show you poll by poll with the graphical average here, but you can see that Glenn Youngkin certainly is taken away. I mean, Terry McAuliffe led during the entirety of the campaign season. For a brief period of time in mid-August, Glenn Youngkin was able to take the lead. And you can see that. But also, when you take a look at all of these polls, practically all of them said one thing, that Terry McAuliffe is going to win. But then in the later month of October, I don't know why I said April, I think I saw April earlier on, you can see that between the two, and I did not see April, so I do not know why I said April, between the two, now, more recently, it has become ties. In fact, according to Wikipedia, more polls than not have put the Republican Party ahead. Personally, I'm surprised to see this because it wasn't on Real Clear Politics or 538, but based off of the numbers here, you're either seeing a lot of ties or a Republican advantage across the more recent numbers. And that absolutely can make up can account for this change here. 538 has yet to include this most recent poll, but as you can see, they have only been including likely voters, which means this +8 is going to be added in. They've had one poll that shows that Glenn Youngkin has taken an advantage, but never have they seen an 8-point advantage for Glenn Youngkin over Terry McAuliffe, no matter what type of pollster polls the race, including the Trafalgar group, which is a group that typically leans heavily towards the right. And even them don't fail to see the true, or at least the Fox News characterization of Virginia being a Republican state. And I think that this goes to the point that Virginia isn't this state that can be decreed ultimately a solid state for the Democratic Party. Maybe President Trump was just that one candidate. And personally, I am very surprised. I thought the Democratic Party was going to do better in Virginia and New Jersey. And one thing that has been consistent over the past month is that the Democratic Party is falling out of favor, even in states that they won in 2020 by a margin of 17 points, or 16 points, or a margin of 10 points across the state. You can see the monumentous shift between 2000 and 2020. You can see here that the state of Virginia shifted ultimately 18 points to the left in the span of 20 years. And now it might return to being a red state. The governor projections looking at Virginia keep Virginia as a likely state. I've held my tongue on the Virginia finalized prediction and will publish it this weekend. I might be wrong. I don't know yet. We will find out. I will be going live for the November election, so keep that in mind. I still want to be pretty active when it comes down to live streaming election results, but when I do say, and I do say this in confidence, is that this race is going to go on pretty long. And I think that the Democratic Party has had every means of winning this race, but it was Terry McAuliffe's race individually to lose. And unfortunately, it looks like he's losing. For the first time, Real Clear Politics is putting Glenn Youngkin in the advantage in terms of the overall average. For the first time, we have yet to see. In addition to that, 538 looks like they are going to tomorrow. An 8-point skew is enough to shift that 1.5% in favor of him, in favor of Glenn Youngkin ahead of the 2021 race. So much is at stake in this race, I would say, for both political parties, and the Republican Party clearly is playing the game a lot better. And in terms of the response to these new numbers, you can see here that predicted the political betting markets have been changing slightly, but still roughly around the same amount, which shows that the Democratic Party still has the upper hand when it comes down to winning the Virginia gubernatorial races, but the Republican Party has all of a sudden had a surge, and it makes sense. Yesterday, the number stood at 68 cents for a Democratic share compared to just 36 cents for a Republican share. Well, now that number has dramatically increased for Democrats and dramatically decreased for Republicans. I said that wrong. It has dramatically decreased for Democrats and dramatically increased for Republicans. Don't know why I misspoke. I apologize for that, but unfortunately I did. So I see the predicted market as the first few steps into acknowledgement of the Republican Party's seemingly likely victory, according to Fox News. I mean, Fox News sometimes is wrong about races, but I would say that is less likely than it is to be this type of circumstance. When you take a look at 2013 during that competitive time period, you will see that Joe Biden has actually a worse approval rating than President Biden, has a worse approval rating now than President Obama did for a very significant portion of that point in time. But the thing is, Virginia now is not nearly as center or moderate as it was back in 2013. Yet that makes it even more impressive that Glenn Youngkin can take such an advantage. Because when you take a look at the numbers with not Ralph Northam and Ed Gillespie, actually. Sorry, I meant to go back to Terry McAuliffe and Ken Cuccinelli. You can see here that in the recent numbers, or at least the RCP average, Ken Cuccinelli got 39% of the vote, ended up getting 46% of the vote, and Terry McAuliffe got 57% of the vote, 56% of the vote, ended up getting, 46% of the vote, and he ended up getting 48% of the vote in the final election. So when you take a look at this, it looks like it actually underestimates Republican support, which again is another reason why, looking at the 2021 numbers, Democrats should be exceptionally worried. I mean, Fox News hasn't done this before. When you take a look at their polls in this state, you will see that the two ones that were released had Terry McAuliffe up by 4 and had Terry McAuliffe up by 5. The rest of them have always had Terry McAuliffe up. Sorry about that, my screen recorder cut out, but I was talking about how Glenn Youngkin and Terry McAuliffe really haven't seen many competitive polls before this one, and it was just a complete skyrocket in the opposite direction that the Democratic Party would have favored. When you take a look at this, all of a sudden you see that the lack of support has translated into a 13-point shift for Glenn Youngkin. And I will say this now, if you are a Democrat watching this video, be worried about what the outcome will be in the state of Virginia. This is a state that is the first true test for the Republican Party. It is a state that went to Joe Biden by a margin of 10 percentage points. So when you take a look at that and you still see Republicans win, that says more about your party than it does about the other one. The Democratic Party, this was their race to lose. If they lose it, it is on them. The GOP just simply played the game that they always do. They do well in off years. They do well in low turnout years. They do well in these types of positions, even if Democrats may have won it in years prior, or quite literally the year prior. The same way that in 2008, when you take a look at that governor election in the state of Virginia, you saw that the results resulted in a Republican victory in 2009, when the Democrats won in 2008 by a very large margin in Virginia for a Democrat, 6 points, a 14-point shift relative to 2004. 2009 landed Bob McDonnell a margin of 59% to 41% in the finalized Virginia gubernatorial election. So when you see that, you can start to see how the anti-incumbent wave begins to form. And it happened in 2009. 2013, Democrats lucked out. The turnout was a little bit higher, and Terry McAuliffe was a more likable candidate than Ken Cuccinelli. 2017, the Democrats had the luxury of blaming every and anything on President Trump. And while Democrats may be trying to do that now, it doesn't look like it's going to work. All around here, Glenn Youngkin was continues to be one of the better GOP nominees the Democrats could have been facing off against. I will say that Glenn Youngkin is in a very powerful position and could could win this state and, yes, now quickly change the laws of the state of Virginia. He could make it so abortion is illegal, and then it goes to the state legislature. That's their consideration to make. He could try to make it illegal through the means of pressure, whatever it might be. But the point is that Glenn Youngkin is not going to work well amongst these Democrats, but that's assuming Democrats also win control of the state delegation, of the state House of Delegates. So all around here, I will say that Democrats are in a very vulnerable position. This poll exposed exactly what they never wanted to get out, that they were no longer winning in a state that they won by double digits. There was a lot of hype behind Virginia. There was a lot of consideration about what was going into this race. Still, to this day, Virginia stands to be that one type of moment where we get a glimpse into 2022. And as it stands today, Terry McAuliffe does not look like he's on a pathway to victory. He was on the pathway to victory for such a long time, peaking at a 7-point lead on Real Clear Politics and then on 538. Terry McAuliffe was able to maintain a lead at one point of 8 points across the state itself. So looking at the latest polls in both 538 and also Real Clear Politics, you start to see things add up. In addition to that, it just puts the Republican Party in an overall much more powerful position before. And if they can win in Virginia, a lot more is on the radar for the GOP, which means that if Democrats want to curtail their future endeavors, they have to start now. However, Glenn Youngkin seems to have already done very well in this race and just needs to continue maintaining such a figure. The only thing that could derail him if more polls start to show that he's maintaining a lead is if Donald Trump himself comes up to Virginia to go ahead and speak, which, to be completely honest, is a very real possibility. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2021 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.